Good morning, everybody, and thank you all very much for coming along this morning. First of all, I'd just like to open up with a couple of things. Firstly, I'd just like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woi-wurrung people as the traditional owners and true custodians of the land where we're gathered here now. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and just generally pay respects to their culture, the way they've cared for this country over many, many thousands of years. I'd also like to pay a huge thank you to Provans, Marnie and the team here for co-hosting this event with City of Yarra. This is a space where we've been trying to get traction and wanting to have greater communication with our builders and architects. The built environment is critical to our net zero ambitions and goals, and bringing this event together and getting so many people, we've had over 140 registrations today, all the exhibitors in one place is something that we hope you can all get a lot out of and learn a lot from and go away from here more confident to build more sustainable homes, more energy efficient homes, more comfortable homes for people to live in and places to renovate. We've got two wonderful speakers here with us today. We've got Jeremy from the Sustainable Builders Alliance and we've got Mark from MVH Constructions. Apologies for the typo in the email, but there will be all of their contact details coming out afterwards, how you go about joining the Sustainable Builders Alliance, links to their resources, and Mark's contact details, more about MVH Construction and things in the email afterwards. But that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Jeremy from the Sustainable Builders Alliance to run through what they do and how they can help you to build more sustainable homes. Jeremy.
Hopefully you can all see this. Can I just get an idea of who's heard of the Sustainable Builders Alliance? A few people. Of those people who found what we're putting out useful, insightful. Nice hand up there, Hamish, over there. Yeah, well, that's good. I'm glad someone put their hand up at least. For everybody else, I guess this is a good opportunity for me to introduce what the Sustainable Builders Alliance is about. The Sustainable Builders Alliance started about 3 years ago, just before COVID. There's 7 sustainable builders who got together and decided that we needed to drive a net zero agenda and put out the information that's needed in the building industry to move it to a net zero footing, at least in the domestic sphere. That's our, I guess, our speciality, the directors of this. And really to get as much free information out to the industry. Next slide. Maybe even next slide. What I want to talk about today is 2 things. I want to talk about what's coming in May, which is 7-star whole of home, NatHERS whole of home, and why that's useful, how you can use it to leverage to produce net zero operational energy homes. That's a home that produces as much power as it uses. And where you can get resources through the Sustainable Builders Alliance that will give you all the information that you need to, to thrive in what is quite a difficult system, or there's a lot of moving parts to it. I'll go through some of those moving parts. Now, there's a lot on the screen, and I know it's not all that easy to see, but let's see how we go here. What you're seeing on the left is the scheme. All that NatHERS 7-star whole of home is, it's just the combination of 7 stars. So we're moving from 6 stars to 7 stars. Most of you will be aware with the star rating system. 6 stars to 7 stars, and I know there's a bit of angst in the industry about that, which I'll touch on shortly, but that's one half of it. And the other half is looking at the major appliances, fixed appliances in the home, and putting those into the calculation as well, because at the end of the day, it's the appliances that use the energy in the home. If we want to know how much energy a home is using, then we need to have those details in the calculation as well. And from the government's point of view, what they're trying to do is they're trying to lower the energy use in the home, because energy use is directly proportional to how much carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere. If you're drawing most of your energy out of the grid or burning gas, you're using fossil fuels. If we look down here on the right, you can just see a pie graph. This is what the government is trying to minimise. That pie graph is all of the... If you took all the homes throughout Australia and you averaged all the existing homes and the new homes together, looked at where their energy was used, that's what you'd get. You can't quite see it from where you are, but the big wedge is space conditioning, so heating and cooling homes. The purple wedge down the bottom, also quite big, hot water. The blue top wedge on the right there is general plug-in appliances. And then you've got lighting and cooking. Those are the smaller wedges there. Now, the government wants to try and minimise the energy used in there because that pie, in burning the fossil fuels to facilitate the functions in each one of those wedges, 6 tonnes of carbon dioxide is released into the atmosphere, or each house is attributable to 6 tonnes being released every year from burning of the fossil fuels. Actually, in Victoria, it's a little bit higher than that because we use brown coal and have to transport our power a long way. And if you consider that a house can last at least 50 years, that could very well easily be 300 tonnes of carbon dioxide released, heavier than the weight of the house itself. And so this is an apple to pick for the government in trying to lower Australia's carbon emissions. And the good news is we can get rid of just about all of that today, and that's what the Sustainable Builders Alliance is about providing the information about what are the technologies to choose, how you can use the software schemes that we've had to minimise and then to produce power on site with photovoltaics to produce as much power as you're using. Get rid of that all today. Now, the scheme itself, I'm as well as builder, I'm a long-time builder, long-time thermal performance assessor since the scheme came in 2004. Also get involved with a fair bit of design. So, as an assessor, this is what you're going to now need to put on the plans for me or someone like me to rate. There's a lot more information now that you're going to need. One, you're going to have a design getting up to 7 stars, and I'll be showing you where to get some information on how to do that later. Then I'll just tell you what these different, maybe actually, don't worry, I'll just talk because there's a lot to try and communicate here. The first little thing here, you can't see that, but that's the space conditioning plant. So if we're trying to minimise that one, we're trying to minimise space conditioning energy that a house uses. You want to have a house that doesn't need much to begin with because it's designed for the climate, designed well. Plus, you're going to want to look at the efficiency of the heating and cooling plant that you put in the homes. Those two things together will determine how much energy is in that big wedge on the side there. The next bit of information that's got to go into the software when you do the energy rating now is the hot water system. A hot water system, an efficient hot water system, can supply the hot water needs of the house in the purple down the bottom with about half of the energy that's needed in that wedge. So a saving of about half of that wedge. I should say, by the way, if you get to 7 stars and you choose an efficient heating and cooling system, that blue, light blue wedge, that big one, you can save about 3/4 of the power to run a home. You can run it with about 1/4 of what's needed on that wedge. Another thing for lighting, you need to now put on the plans how much lighting in watts per square metre. So the number of lights times the bulbs that you put in will give you the amount of energy that a home uses for lighting. Cooking. The amount of cooking energy is affected by your choice of cooktop and your choice of oven. Has a small effect on that. And then appliances. Well, actually, before I get to appliances, there's one here which is sort of beyond that pie graph, which is pool use, because pools can use a lot of energy. At the moment, it's just looking at the pool pump or a spa pump, also spa pumps as well. They get put into this system. It's not looking at heating pools, which use a huge amount of energy, but my guess is I know that they are looking at the calculations that would be needed to underlie that. So that may be coming into the system down the track. The plug-in appliances, you don't need to put in any information about that. The software will just assume an average amount for plug-in appliances there. And it works on square metres, like an average amount of plug-in appliance per square metre of house. So bigger houses will typically use a bit more, have more things plugged in, they'll use a bit more energy than small houses. So the system does give a little bit of advantage to a small house for once, which is nice. And lastly, the system gives a credit if you're producing power. If you're producing solar power, that will also go into the calculation and give you a credit. Now, the way it works is once you put the information of the models of the appliances into the software then does calculation over a year. So for every hour, over 365 days, it will call up the weather data, it'll predict the temperatures, it'll see where the heating and cooling is needed, it'll work out how efficient your heating and cooling is as to how much power that takes. It'll look at people having showers, people turning on lights when the sun goes down, living in the house, the pool pump running, sun shining on the roof and producing power if you do have photovoltaics. You don't have to have them, but if you do, it will give you a credit on that. And it'll work out how much energy the house uses over the year. So in the past, we just had a star rating system that gave you some idea of how well the house heat and cool itself, but it wouldn't give you really any idea of how cheap it was or expensive it was to run a house. Now this new system includes that. And so how do you pass? Maybe you can forward through until I say stop. Keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going, keep going. Stop. Back one. Okay. How do you pass? The software, as well as doing a rating of how much energy your house uses, does a second rating in the background. The second rating in the background is what they call their default 7-star home. And what it is, they get your home. Now, your home might be 7 stars, but it might have been 8 stars, could have been 9 stars, could have been 10 stars potentially. It'll dumb that back to 7 stars, and then it'll take out your appliance suite that you chose, and it'll put in these default appliances: a 3-star ducted gas reverse cycle air conditioner, 5-star gas hot water, and 4 watts per square metre for lighting, and then it will run the simulation. And under National Construction Code clause H6P2, you're required to have a home that your little home with your suite and your star rating is required to be use 30% less energy than your house at 7 stars with those default appliances. So that's how the system works. If you do that, you'll see on the new report, as well as a star rating, there'll be a little sliding scales, 60 to 100. 60 is a pass. So if you do that, if you're 30% less energy use than the default home, you will pass. But what I do want to show, next slide, is right along the end of that scale, there's something that says net zero home. And these are 3 really important words that most people don't know are there now. This is in a software referenced by the National Construction Code that now gives a pathway to designing up to net zero. So you can use this if you get the right mix of star rating, appliance use, solar panels on the roof. You can get the right mix to produce a home on the ground that produces as much power over the year as it uses. All right, next slide. Okay, so how do you do well under this system? How do you thrive under this system? There's a lot of information that you need to put on the plans. This is the website. You can't see it all that well, but this is the Sustainable Builders Alliance website, thesba.com.au. I'd encourage you all to, later on today or whenever, go and have a look at that if you haven't already looked at it. Next slide. On that, as well as our fantastic webinars by Hamish over there, who's one of the directors of Sustainable Builders Alliance, the archive for all our webinars there, we've got 25 or so. 30, okay, those are expert guests. So as well as expert guests who come in, talk about design, talk about products, we also have our archive for our podcasts, and our intrepid leader, Simon, over there, runs the podcast. The archive is over there. That's the Sustainable Builders Yak. You can listen to it on iTunes and Spotify. As well as those things, there's also this thing called the Roadmap to Net Zero Homes. And the Roadmap to Net Zero Homes is a huge amount of practical information on what you need to do if you do want a house that produces as much power as it uses, and potentially also looks at its embodied carbon and offsets that. But very quickly, these are the steps. This is sort of the net zero house equation, if you like. Step number one, and this is how the website is laid out to make it easy. Step number one, all about good design, designing for climate, designing a house that doesn't need much heating and cooling to begin with. So that's a good first step. Step number two, choose materials that are themselves low in what they call embodied carbon. That's the amount of energy that's gone into creating the materials and releasing carbon dioxide in the first place. Let's try and choose things that don't have that impact and are sustainable more broadly. Step number three is what a lot of people and a lot of the industry whinge about if you read on socials, and that's this NatHer system is only a piece of paper at the end of the day. What we want is homes that perform on the ground as they should, or as they predicted to do on paper. And that's where performance construction comes into it. So I've got a whole step three about how houses, where they fail, what can be done to make sure that they perform thermally on the ground as they should. Step four, appliances, how to choose efficient appliances, how to size up heating and cooling. You're going to need to know this. What technologies you should be reaching for. How within a certain technology, how you can distinguish between an energy efficient model and a non-energy efficient models. Where to go for that information, all on step four. Step five is what you need to consider when you're thinking about a successful solar install. How to size it up, how to locate it, what infrastructure to put on. It goes into looking at batteries, even electrical cars, and potentially linking those to the home. You put all those things together and you can produce a house that produces not only enough power to run over a year, or produces as much power as it uses over the year, so has a net energy balance. But you can start also calculating. In fact, step two gives you some sources to calculate how much embodied carbon is in the home, and then you can look at potentially offsetting that or putting on a little bit more solar panels to pay back that energy debt for a true net zero outcome. All right, let me show you quickly some resources on the site that I would be considering reaching for. Step number one, all about good design. And I know if you've read any socials or media, they're always talking about how expensive it's going to be to go from 6 stars to 7 stars. That's because they missed the point. What they're doing in most of those articles is saying, I've got a 6-star home, how much do I need to put money in to get to a 7-star home? How much insulation do I need to put in? How much windows do I put in? They're always reaching for products to get to that 7 stars. By far the cheapest way to get to 7 stars, could be absolutely no cost, is with good design. Good design will get you to 7 stars. Thinking about it as a material substitution problem is the wrong way to think about it. And step one goes through all the rules of passive solar design, what you need to know. Next slide. And on the website, there are also things you can download, useful templates you can download. This tool I'd be downloading if you've got anything to do with design. This is the 7-star cheat sheet, and it literally just gives you a whole lot of mental prompts to look at a set of plans and look at the questions on the cheat sheet. And if any red flags start coming up, that's when you should be giving it back to the client or the thermal performance assessor. Just say you're a builder, you've got plans coming across your desk, has not yet had its building certificate. You might chuck it through the 7-star cheat sheet. If you see problems, it's probably not worth putting in a lot of time on the quoting process. You might point out a few issues, hand it back and say you might want to check this with the thermal performance assessor. Okay, next one. Shooting to step 4, because that covers appliance selection, and that's the big change with NatHer's whole of home, is that you've got to know about appliance selection. This is where it goes through the different technologies, what to look for, where there are databases, how to rank appliances, and how to select them and what to consider in the install. Next slide. And the tool of choice that I've been downloading from that step are these templates. These templates are designed to be filled out and put on the plan so that the thermal performance assessor has the information that they need to do the rating. You know, how do you know at the moment what information you've got to put on the plans? You know, what do you need to put on model numbers? Do you need to put on energy specifics? These templates have all the answers and they have instructions on how to fill them out. You can simply fill out your appliances, put them on the plans, and that'll help that process go nice and smoothly. Next slide. And step 5 is everything you need to know about putting on photovoltaics. Next slide. There is a template coming for that too, but I haven't done it yet. I probably might skip to the end, but yeah. Actually, maybe, yeah, time-wise, right? Yeah. Okay, all right. Skip to the end. There's a lot there about how to build properly, where buildings fail, how to make sure that they don't fail, and there's quality assurance checklists on there. But the last thing I'd like to say, we're trying to get the message out, but education is only one part of what we're trying to achieve. To actually make change, we need foot in the door, we need to be at the tables when decisions are made, offering up the builder's perspective, the designer's perspective on things. And to do that, we need people joining the Alliance. Next page. At the moment, 469 companies, builders, designers, assessors, suppliers, who think we can do better, have signed up. I would encourage you also, if what I'm saying today jives with you, to consider signing up. Next page. Or better yet, we've got big ambitions for where we want to go with Sustainable Builders Alliance, but we can't get there alone. And I know I should already thank Provans in particular. They're one of our platinum sponsors and they put this day on. Thanks for setting this up. We've got Vapor Seal over there, one of our sponsors. Performance membranes. Look, next slide, and you can see a picture of some of them. And I know there's lots of builders as well. Saveboard, McCormack's, who might be here today. I haven't seen all the suppliers, but Proclimer as well, if they're here today, put a huge amount of education out to the industry. So if you have a company and you think that this what we're trying to achieve is worthwhile, getting the information out to the industry, please consider. Next slide. And even if you don't do that, I would invite you to check out the website, read it through, and join what will be a conga line to net zero homes. Once this software is out, when people understand how to achieve a net zero home, it's simply rinse and repeat each time you do a new house. I've been doing them for years in this whole of home method, and it does work. So consider getting in early, and then you get the benefits of early market entry. Next slide. And we may just, if we're all pulling in the same direction, you never know, we might just get where we need to go. No. And that's it, everyone. Thanks.
Thank you for coming. Thanks for Provans for putting on today's event. It's great to see so many people here and talking about stuff that is so important for the building construction industry and our world in general. I'd like to pay respect to the past and present owners of this land where we meet on today. Now, quickly, I'm going to whiz through this really quickly, and Aaron, you're going to have to be on your toes about these slides because I've got a lot to cover. I'm going to be covering a little bit more focused on, we do a lot of passive house construction. So for those who don't know much about passive house, this will be a little bit of an introduction to passive house and also a little bit of a chat of why passive house is important in our Australian environment, because there is a lot of myths and misconceptions that it is only a European product that only performs overseas. Secondly, we will then get into sustainability and recycling and how you can make your job sites better and how you can improve your waste management. Let's do it. Firstly, I'm just a builder. Anything I say today isn't necessarily project specific. You need to go away and look at what I've spoken about and how that reflects on your projects and model your projects as well. So as I said, every job is, what's right for one job is not necessarily right for another job in terms of insulation, windows, all that. So as I said, do your research, speak to the right people, and as I said, use this as a guide or a platform or a stepping stone of where you need to go. Okay, I have 25 years experience in carpentry. We build homes, healthy homes that use low energy to maintain a stable temperature year round. We do this to provide better outcomes for our clients and better results for the environment. All we build is this style of home. We don't feel that we can confidently give our clients a good product without meeting these benchmarks that we try to. Why do we believe Passive House is necessary? The term Passive House relates to a set of standards that can be applied to any type of building, and they address mould, condensation and allergens. Sick building syndrome. So why are we like this now, and why didn't we used to be like this a long time ago? I think with the energy NCC moving up and people insulating homes and all of a sudden closing in homes and increasing air tightness, we can, without implementing other things, we can actually create more of a rod for our back and more issues than that. So we do need to implement the full range of assets that we've got to achieve the right outcome. So Passive House was developed in Europe in the early 90s. To really just put this into a nutshell, the houses we build, Passive House that we build here, wouldn't perform overseas. They're built for our climate and they're built for our weather patterns, and they wouldn't perform in a northern hemisphere. So when people do say, listen, it works overseas in extreme climates, they're a different Passive House to what we build here. So if anything, Passive House is what you should be building, or Passive House principles. So it's, for those who don't know, a Passive House is based on 5 principles that are modelled to suit the climate and data of your region. These principles form the core structure of your house and the linchpin to achieving a successful outcome. Just like a table, and a friend of mine, a few of you may have heard this, Sven from Maxi uses this analogy. Just like a table, a Passive House needs all 5 components to be able to function. So there you see the table missing the leg. So people who say we're using Passive House principles, it can be a little bit dangerous if you're using some and not all. So as I said, as a table probably wouldn't work with only 3 legs. If you make your house super airtight and don't look at ventilation and things like that and rely on open windows, you might be in a bit of trouble. The 5 key principles: airtightness, mechanical ventilation, no thermal bridges, high performance windows and superior insulation. Number 1, window types. We might skip through this because most people know what the different windows do. We've got area clad, we've got UPVC, thermally broken. A window is a hole in your insulation layer. So there's no point going around putting really high levels of insulation in your walls and then having this hole in your wall and not treating that with respect. Just because a window is double glazed doesn't mean it's the same as the next double glazed window. Insulation, we might keep skipping through that as well. There are numerous types of insulation. You're after a continuous layer of insulation around your job. And then if you are going away to retrofit something, make sure that your existing lighting and things like that are suited for insulation coverage. Mechanical ventilation, again, one that we find is getting a little bit more traction. We have a lot of vapour in our homes, so your mechanical ventilation is going to deal with that. Oh, now you're going super quick. I think each person gives off about 8 litres from their body a day of moisture. You've also got showers, you've got cooking, you've got all sorts of stuff. So mechanical ventilation runs 24/7 in your house. It's extracting from the wet areas, the kitchens, the laundries, and bringing fresh filtered air into the living room. So in winter, when your house is closed up, to try to maintain that heat that you've developed in there, this is actually running and managing that vapour. If not, that vapour will potentially, you'll see condensation on windows and things like that. That is what a HRV would look like in your home. The 5 Passive House principles. Thermal bridges are a good one for builders to understand and architects. If we just move to the next one. That's a hole in an insulation layer that you can see has a pretty big effect. A thermal bridge is essentially a highway for coldness or heat to come into your home. On the next slide, we've got so a thermal bridge is essentially what a thermal bridge can happen in your home is like pulling out a beer bottle and putting it on your kitchen bench. It comes out dry, and as soon as it's in a warmer atmosphere, you watch the condensation develop on it. That's similar to a window frame. If it's not thermally broken on the outside, that coldness can come through to the inside warm temperature and condensate. It's also going to be condensating around the window that you don't see. Same with steel beams. An example of the steel beam is here. We've got a cantilever outside of the house. As that's exposed on the cold layer of the house, that's going to be bringing back... that heat is going to pretty much travel up a highway into the house, and above your plaster and below your floor layer, you're going to have condensation developing. Number 5, air tightness. So as we start to bring all these in, we do, and build up the air tightness, we do need to manage the ventilation. They say the existing housing stock can have up to 30 air changes per hour. Current new home standard is roughly 15.4. Passive house standard is 0.6, and a fit standard is 1. The benefits of an airtight home: improved energy efficiency, no wind washing on insulation. So it's all good putting in really good insulation into your home and saying I've got R6 in my ceiling and R4 in my walls or whatever else, but unless you protect that insulation like a polar fleece jacket, and zipping it up, you can actually reduce the effects of your insulation by about 40%. Enhanced comfort, better indoor air quality, moisture control, noise reduction, no ants or bugs. Yeah, exactly there. You've got a jacket there. You know when your jacket's open, it's not doing a whole lot. You zip it all up. All of a sudden, you've got a nice warm layer around your body. Go for a run, though, and then all of a sudden, you're going to be sweating on the inside of that jacket. So you need to manage that moisture, but you need that continuous layer of insulation. Blower door test, that's how we test to get this air tightness results. And remember, if you are trying to achieve a super tight house, houses achieving air tightness of less than 5 air changes per hour do require a ventilation unit. So the result is a fresh, vibrant home that has no mould or allergens, provides fresh filtered air 24/7, an airtight home that uses up to 90% less energy and maintains a comfortable, stable temperature year-round, all achieved through uninterrupted insulation, no thermal bridges, and European windows, and not necessarily European windows and doors, that's an old slide, sorry. A certified passive house includes a level of scrutiny that is not typically seen in our building industry. If you need to know more or want to find out more, the resources are Australian Passive House Association, Passipedia, Passive House Institute. Open days are a great way to go and see results and actually speak to people who live and feel these houses, and it's probably the best way to actually be able to appreciate the difference of it. I'm looking at Hamish because he helped coin some of this. So now moving across to recycling. So I skimmed through Passive House there because a lot of people don't prescribe to the Passive House theory, and it's not necessarily the end-all or be-all. So as I said, that's just pushing the way that we like to build a house. You don't need to build that way to be compliant, but as I said, it works for us. One thing that over the past few years that we've really tried to pick up on is our waste management. Some facts for you is that we're the second largest waste producers in Australia is the construction and demolition industry. 25.2 million tonnes go into landfill per year, which equates to 38% of all waste products across the board. This waste generation has grown by 39% over a 15-year period, and a large proportion of this waste is recyclable. It's time for change. We can recycle soft plastics, asphalts, bricks, concrete pavers, ceramics, plaster, the list goes on, and every week I sort of meet with or speak to people who are bringing something else out. So it's changing ever so quickly. What we do on our sites, we have what we call is a MVH eco site. We have waste sorting facilities. We target for 80% of our waste to be recycled or repurposed, and we don't charge our clients any extra for that. So We actually bring it into our induction process. So when we're inducting people onto site, we go through the OH&S stuff, we go through all the stuff that you need to know on site, and then we cover how we're actually going to manage our waste on site and what's required from them. We actually use a QR code, and we have a video of me sitting there going through all that, and then at the end of it saying, we've got a waste bin over there for timber, we've got that there for this, do that there for that. And it's amazing then when people know that they've been inducted to it and it's part of the actual policy for the project, you don't need to micromanage that. And you know that if you're not on site and they've seen that video of you talking about waste and rubbish, it's along with their OH&S requirements, it's a really good way to introduce them to that. Minimising your waste on site is easier than you may think. Refuse, reduce, reuse, repurpose, and last of all, recycle. So we see recycling as being the last option there. If you reduce what you're using, if you refuse what you're using and look for alternatives, reuse, repurpose, it's a whole lot better. Getting involved early, so in the pre-construction phase, speaking to the designers, speaking to the owners of what can be salvaged from the demolition, can any items be reused, can you put it on marketplace, second-hand building dealers. So on some jobs we've just rang up people who like sell all that sort of stuff and just say, do you want to come and grab it? And then architects to make it a deconstruction process rather than a demolishing process. So if we can get that early in the design and actually make that part of the tender process for the builders, then all of a sudden a lot of builders, they're just going to take that on as, well, that's what's been prescribed, that's what we're going to do. So I think starting at the top of the tree there or the root system, whichever way you want to look at, it's something that is a non-negotiable. It's there in the plans, the same way as it might be whether you use a concrete slab or timber subfloor. Get it in early and say, all right, when you're tendering for this process, you have to make sure that those tiles are going to get reused and this is who you might be using. Concrete slabs going off to get crushed up and used as road base, etc., etc. Look at the soil report, see if the foundations can be altered, things like that. Speak to the engineers. Screw piles, board piers, surefoot, loads of different ways that you can actually reduce the amount of soil that you're pulling out of the ground, because generally the more soil you put out of the ground, the more concrete you're putting back into it. And then potentially look at if there are more sustainable options than your regular concrete mixes. During construction, as I said, we get everyone on board. Don't do it alone. If you do it alone, it'll drive you insane and you'll end up with massive piles of stuff that you end up taking to the tip anyway. You'll be surprised the uptake on it. We have 80-year-old old tilers coming up to me asking where to put their tuna can from lunch and all sorts of stuff, the bags of glue, bags of grout. As I said, it empowers people to make a difference and make change. Make it part of your company's ethos as a non-negotiable and use this as marketing to give you an edge. Make this extra work actually work for you, so when you are pitching it at a client, you're not actually just saying we're the best builders, we can do this, we can do that, that you're also managing your waste. Choose your materials wisely. Ask your suppliers where their materials come from, what they're made up of, and the afterlife facilities for these materials that can be recycled. Suppliers are so much in tune with this now. We look at Provans knowing their stuff. We look at McCormack's. Everyone is so much more progressive, and if they're not, potentially look at using somebody else. Set up your waste sorting facilities on site. So that we just use the bags on site and fill the bags up, and that changes throughout the project. So not at the start of the job do you need to necessarily have something for the plasterboard. Do you know what I mean? You're going to be changing that as you go. So while you got your bricklayers, you might have a brick bin or a slurry tub section, and then once the bricklayers are moving, you might replace that with plasterboard. It makes it easier for you to stay on top. So we've worked out where our different recycling facilities are, and if we're going off to pick up timber in Greensborough, we know that there's a steel place out there. I'll run a load of steel offcuts while I'm out there. The key is, as I said, to keep it under control. Some stuff that can be recycled on site very easily. And again, the list is endless, but you'd be surprised. Concrete, untreated timber, steel, soft plastics, hard plastics, gyprock, glass, green waste, food scraps, drink containers, cardboard, polystyrene, paint, fluorescent lights, batteries. Everything generally has something you can do with it. This is one that we haven't pushed with too far. It's sort of a bit of a pipe dream, but how we think we can fast track this, and I think now that I've got City of Yarra's ears here, I included it. The potential of, we need to get everyone involved. Developers and people like that aren't going to listen unless there's an incentive for them with that, or unless they see their sale prices increasing. One way that we think that might be able to change quicker is if, when they're going for their planning permit process, there's a way that they can skip the queue or get fast-tracked with their permit a little bit if they do show waste management and sorting facilities in their plans, along with potentially the building standards of what they're building. So if somebody can give with their planning permit a deconstruction plan and say, all right, this is what we're doing with this, and you tick a whole lot of boxes, potentially like being at the theme park where you get the special wristband to skip the queue and go straight to the front. Maybe you can do that, and then all of a sudden you'd look at all the developers changing their tact or saying, all right, all of a sudden this planning permit would have taken us a year. It's now going to take us 3 months if we actually do it this way. As I said, I'm sure that isn't as easy as me standing up here saying it, but at least if we start having these conversations now, and hopefully those conversations have already been had in the right areas, as I said, even if it's not necessarily from the start people doing it for the right intentions, at least it's going to have that positive impact on our environment, and it becomes the norm anyway. The more people we can get doing it, the cheaper it becomes for everybody else, and the easier it becomes for everybody else. Getting architects on board, clients and consumers aware of the waste in the industry and make it part of their construction process. So just like they specify a bench top, they're specifying what happens to their roof tiles, what happens to their bricks, what happens to their timber. Look at the design from the start, how to use the existing resources. So have that meeting with your architects, that site investigation or that initial meeting. Go through and poke your head in the roof and see what size the rafters are or the ceiling joists are, and what you can potentially do with that. It's amazing once you sort of get the bug for reusing stuff, how where it takes you. And then advertising campaigns. If we can get to a way that, just like the Master Builders Association had everyone asking if their builder was a master builder, we want people asking if you recycle your waste, if you do that. And just like we said earlier, don't be a wanker with waste. It was like, don't be a wally with water. The Don't Be a Wally with Water campaign stopped people from hosing down their driveways. You know, it stopped people from just standing there, like washing their car with normal garden hoses and using pressure washers. We want that to be waste. We want builders not to want a commingled mixed skip in their driveway because it's actually bad association with their brand. To give you some idea, the job that we're doing in Fairfield at the moment, running some numbers, the job isn't finished yet. That is what we've kept out of landfill. So at the moment, we had a massive, at the rear of the block, we had to go pretty deep for our footings to hit rock. So hence why we had a lot of clean fill go out of the job. Landfill there, we've got 11.8% out of the whole thing. If we move to the next slide, and we take out the clean fill and we take out a couple of other things, this is actually probably a little bit more reflective of what we've done, and landfill there is at 38%. So as I said, we aim for 80. At the moment, 38% is where we are with this one. I hope the next job's better and the next job's better after that again. But at least, as I said, we're trying to take some ownership of what we're doing and tracking it all to look at these and say, all right, what can we improve on and what's the good results? Unfortunately, the most sustainable option isn't always the cheapest. Clients' values need to be aligned with yours and making sensible choices regarding sustainability versus cost. So it's all good going out there and saying, oh, we'll do this, do that, when it's going to cost your clients a shitload of money to do that. So you need to choose your battles and actually say, all right, it's not going to be cheaper, but again, you're going to lose someone's interest pretty quickly if you're expecting them their build to be twice the amount than what it would usually be, just because you want to recycle something in there that's tricky to recycle. So as I said, choose your battles. If you can get someone halfway there, then potentially on the next job you can get them 3/4 of the way there. We're trying to start or push a program called Real Tradies Recycle. where we have, similar to SBA, playbooks and guides and all of that for people to be able to follow and builders to be able to follow, that makes it easy for them to recycle, and potentially getting in with industry that will help us recycle those things as well. So stay tuned to that. You can follow that on socials and whatever else. And as I said, that's very infinite and by no means as professional as SBA, but we've got a wheelie bin with a hard hat, so it's pretty cool. I don't need to go in what we do. That's our details are there, which I think are coming out in an email anyway. And as a friend of a few of ours here, Robbie from Revival says, unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. So as I said, we need to make the change. We need to make the difference. It's not going to happen by itself, and it's easier than you think. So as I said, we need to use this not just as a way to feel good, but actually make the planet better than what its current state is. Thank you.